water and there'd be lots of ships coming. But then they decided to do the cruise ship thing in 1978. The first year we had 30 cruise ships, and this year we have 320.
Wow.
So it's been a drastic change over those number of years. It's a boom of business. So if you guys look to the right here, you see this lovely mural all along that walkway there? That's called the Ogden Point Breakwater, and that mural is called the Unity Wall mural. It's painted by First Nations youth, about a dozen of them. It's the longest mural in Canada, and it depicts the relationship between First Nations people and nature, and First Nations people and the settlers that came here in the 1800s. So, okay, so here we go. So on the point here is actually a bird sanctuary. All of this area of the bird is protected. Now, National Geographic has stated that this is the second best cold water diving place in the world, and that's why the water is protected here. The marine life is very diverse. So we have different types of whales here. We have the giant receiving octopus. We have wolf eels. It sounds scary, doesn't it? Woo. We have kelp beds and seals and sea lions and sea otters, and you name it, we got it here. And the water is very, very clear. And it's cold. And they say cold water diving, they mean it. The temperature of the water right now is probably about 43 degrees Fahrenheit. In the summer, it gets all the way up to 45. Yeah, I know, balmy, eh? Yeah. So if you're going to go swimming in there, you need a wetsuit. They couldn't say his name properly, so they changed it to Monica. He was the first guy to see this something on the water in this channel. Jets and the big jets, right? Yeah. Now on a Sunday afternoon, they actually have boat races in there. Of course, they're remote control boats. And if you take a look to your left, right behind this yellow-brown house here, which is quite attractive too, but there is a house that looks like it came right out of a fairy tale. Check that out. Yeah, that's somebody's house. Yeah, so that's a heritage home, of course. So anything you can see that that is what it says, they're close to this one monument is called Mile Zero. That is the start of the Trans-Canada Highway. So the Trans-Canada Highway, it starts here, goes up the island to the Niagara, that's where the Niagara was from, by the way. Then it goes across on a ferry to the mainland. It goes all the way across the mainland to the east coast. Then it takes another ferry, goes to the island of Newfoundland. And in St. John's is the other Mile Zero. So that highway is about 8,000 kilometers, or 5 types of playing fields in here. You know, there's tennis courts, there's soccer fields, there's hunting green, there's a cricket green, there's soccer fields, and baseball diamonds, but all of that is free for the public to use. Different kinds of trees in here too. And notice we've got a giant dairy oak here. We got a couple of palm trees. We got some sequoias. We got some pines and some cedars. We got the works in here. Plus there's beautiful statues. There's ponds. There's little lakes. And there's also the children's petting farm, which is right up here on the right, which is closed for the day now, of course. But keep your eyes open because you'll probably see the peacocks wandering around. There's one right there, to the right. Yeah, those guys are in mating season right now, so they're strutting their stuff, doing their calls. There's a whole slew of them around here. Yeah, start looking, you'll see them everywhere. Yeah, they're all over. There's another one right there on the right. Sometimes they wander all the way over to Cook Street Village. And I've seen them all the way up in the university. Oh, the goats are still out. There's the babies. There's the baby goats. Yeah, that's a great place to go. Yeah, on the regular hop on hop off in the daytime, they do the stop here. But in the evening, it's not open for the world. It was carved out of one red cedar tree. It's 127 and a half feet tall. It took 3 men to carve it, 3 First Nations men, Uncle Martin, David Martin, and Henry Hunt, in 1956. And then in 2011, they took it down and refurbished it all and put it back up. So we'll make a little slow passage and get a photo on your mic. So totem is how First Nations people actually recorded everything. They didn't have a written language, so they used a totem as a way to tell stories and record history and happenings in their families, in their villages. Wow. So you can see there's sometimes there's mythical creatures like the thunderbird, and there's real creatures like eagles and bears and orcas, and then also bird of the stars, and even human beings all carved into them. It's all metaphorical, of course, but it tells a story. They're quite prolific here. You'll probably see more along the way. So now, of course, to run across Canada. So he went to Newfoundland to St. John's Mile Zero, and he decided to run from there a marathon a day. That's 26 miles a day on that prosthetic leg, and he wanted to run all the way to this Mile Zero. Well, he made it all the way to the top of Lake Superior. So Beacon Hill Park, interesting story about that. When they in the 1880s, they were going to revamp the park, and so they put out a request for bids to do that and design for it. And this guy there had kind of lied to them. When they got all the money they wanted, they just started to turn the gardens into something, or the park into something lovely B&B. But when it was built, it was actually a brothel. Yes, honest to God, it was. It was built as a brothel. Wouldn't it be a lovely spot for a romantic weekend? So beautiful, but I'd have to go by myself with the romantic weekend. Wow. Alright, I want to point out a couple of very interesting buildings here. So the first one's called the Flamingo. It's probably built in the 1960s. It's right on your right here as you come along. You'll know it when you see it. That's the Flamingo. Yes. And then right across the street, the contrast is insane. Look at this lovely mansion with the ivy growing on it and everything. Of course, it's been turned into apartments because no one can afford the taxes on it in this day and age. But all these great big large houses with this family homes sometimes. It's amazing. All right, folks, I'm going to pull over. You make your way to the stairs. I'll open the back door for you. Back on? All right.
We'll text you when we're ready to stop.
Wharf has the best fish and chips in town. What's that? Yes. I'll pick you up here. Without an hour.
Peacocks, I hear them.
So I'm going to tell you about a famous artist from here. Her name is Emily Carr. Emily Carr was born in Victoria in 1871.
Cook Street Village.
And she studied art in the USA and in Europe. And she became quite famous. It took a while. She struggled a lot because her art was different. It was kind of a new style that people weren't really used to at that point. It was what she was doing and telling her that eventually that her talent would be recognized. And so she stuck to it, and eventually that happened. She became world famous everywhere. And she actually really inspired a lot of other women to become artists as well. And so Emily was a little bit different. She never married. She had a pet monkey named Lou who went everywhere with her. He used to ride on her shoulder. Her pet. It's right by the Empress Hotel where we're going to turn. Now as we're going down this hill here, on the left you're going to see a forest of totem poles. Now those totem poles are not the originals, but they were carved by First Nations men. It was hired by the museum to replicate the original. Or they put the original inside the museum. So First Nations people here, as I said about them, they use it as storytelling. And there's 204 different First Nations here, and they all have a different style of carving. So he's copied many of them, and they've been placed here. And there's also a longhouse here, which is the type of home that our First Nations people lived in. So a longhouse would be, that's what this is called. They built on a cedar because of our very rainforest type climate. The cedar stood up well to that. So a longhouse is a big building. It would hold the whole family and all their extended family. It could be a whole lot of people. Now they use this when they sign agreements with the government. They'll use a longhouse here. They'll have a ceremony in there with the government, and then they'll be able to sign. So this is our museum on our left here, the Royal History Museum. There's also an IMAX theater in there. And that's great films. Alright, so we're just going to pull in here to the Empress. This is the next stop if anybody wants to get off. So down here by the Empress, you can wander all through Old Town, which is straight ahead of us here. All those buildings, that's Old Town where the original fort was, of Fort Victoria. And if you want to go to Chinatown, I'm going to go to Chinatown. I can drop you off there, or you can walk there. But this is the Empress stop. So as soon as the cars leave, we can pull into the curb, they'll drop us off. The original harbor was. So if you want off here, I'll open the back door for you. I'll be back around 7:15. Right around there, yep. And if I miss you that time, I'll be back again in probably like 30 minutes or something. Treaty signing that is designated the line between the U.S. and British North America. So they made the demarcation, and it was like the 49th parallel with a few little dips in it. And so his original fort was actually in the U.S. And of course he was a British company, so he needed to move his fort to somewhere in British country. So that's why he came here. It took him a while to find the right spot. And now along the coast, checking all these different places, and settled it right in here in the inner harbor. It was crazy. Like this kind of stuff. They're always in the way. They always are. They park in the craziest places. It's like totally the inside was just flooded. And they redid all the inside, but they kept the outside. We do that all the time here in the city. We keep things that are old. So this is the guy at the turnpike. All the ships get all the cargo ships, all the ships, everything went through here. This was the main avenue. There was a little railroad line there too. So this was really good. All those ships. gold rush. It came about 10 years before we did. So they knew what to expect. So when they heard what was going on, they sent us prefabricated storefronts, prefabricated buildings, so that we had some places to put people. They were very helpful. We supplied them a whole lot of bricks to rebuild. So we guys had a good relationship. We have the same telephone book. We phone starts to work. We want us to tell them what our mail was to go through San Francisco before we went across the states and back up in Canada. So we just look right here. This is Sebastian Square. This was the original north border of the fort. See that big cement thing there in the middle? That's where the guns were. There was a cannon on there before. Now it's got picnic tables. That's what it's there. You know what I mean? So up in there, there's a lot of local artisans who have their little kiosks and sell all their wares. And there's pubs there. The guys are quarters. The most haunted building in all of the fort. One of the said to be the most haunted city in all of the Canada. So there you go.
Oh my gosh.
So as I said, bring up buses coming out. So Chinatown, our Chinatown is the second oldest in North America, next to San Francisco. It was the oldest in Canada. And at one time it was the second largest in Canada as well. Actually, I think it was the first largest for a while. But it used to be about 6 square blocks, but now it's only 2. But originally there was actually 2 opera houses there. There was rice factories. There were train yards. There was a farm. And there were opium fields. I know, that's a little bizarre, but that's the truth. So I'm going to point out something called Fantan Alley up here. Fantan Alley is the narrowest commercial street all front there, which is about 1 meter across.
Chinatown.
And it's named after a Chinese gambling game called Fantan. So in these alleyways, there was many of them around Victoria. And again, in those alleyways, on the upper levels of buildings, there would be gambling games. And they were illegal, of course. So what happened was we always had to look at it. If we saw the cops coming, we'd tell everybody that they'd all go disappear through trapdoors on the floor, just disperse out of the alleyways and not to look at each other. Now, there's Fantan Alley right there. I'm going to go slowly by so you can see. It's very narrow. Now, in the 1980s, they did a movie in Fantan Alley, and Mel Gibson, Golden Arms, right on the wire. They raced a motorcycle through there. Now, they had to put the handlebars down narrower because they wouldn't fit. Yeah. So we put on this as Johnson Harmonious Interest, which were put up here cooperation with the city of Victoria and Chinatown in 1981. They were in Chinatown. And on either side, you'll see as we come through, there are stone carved lines. They were a gift from our sister city in China. Underneath each is a time capsule. And it's said that if ever an honest politician passes between these 2 lines, they'll come to life. And you can see another lovely mural here to the left, just depicting life back in the 1800s and early 1900s. There was a huge Chinese influx. Some from San Francisco after their gold rush, and a lot of people from China, especially when they started building the railroads, right? So because there were so many Chinese immigrants and children, there wasn't enough teachers, so the Chinese associations in the city built this school. It's on the left. It was built in 1909. They still have school in there. Because the children were born in Canada, they couldn't go to the Canadian schools, so they need some way to teach them, and they wanted them to learn English. So that's why they built the school. And nowadays, you can actually go there and learn Mandarin and Cantonese. Just here on our left is the first Masonic Lodge in Victoria, the original one, it's still here, at 650 Bismarck Street. And the big building across the street, the big blue-color building, was the first retail Hudson Bay store. They used to be just a fur trading company, then they got into retail. Okay, so you come around the corner, you're going to see a big red building in the corner up here on the right. And that was our original city hall. It was built in the 1870s. Now, when they were building this building, you see the tower up there, they wanted a plaque for it, so they sent to England and said, And finally we sent another message back. I said, hey, where's our clock? I said, well, we sent it to Victoria, Australia. Oops, wrong continent. We had to wait another 2 years to get it. So they always say Victoria's runs 2 years behind. Yeah. Yeah. So this was the very first building that, heritage building. It's traditions, sure enough. They brought it down to the safety building. They preserved it. And it's actually part of the civic complex. It's still in use. That's like I said, what we do. We take those
My
old buildings
favorite
and we
Dollar
repurpose them.
Tree.
Right on our left up here, you can see this monument sitting on the ground here on the corner. Now that's called the Spindle World. There's a bunch of those around the city, different things about First Nations people here. There's a plaque beside it. Now it's a giant replica, of course, because the Spindle World is what the First Nations women used to spin wool. They would hold it in their hand. Now that one's a 1-ton bronze casting and it's about 2 meters high. So on the right-hand side here is the first playhouse. And the old days that was a log here. But Victoria here has all of the different arts. We have ballet, symphony, theater, all of the different arts. So folks, if anybody wants to go to Chinatown, this is the stop. You can see Fantan Alley's right there to our right. We'll walk through. I'm just going to stop right up here past the transit stop. All right, there we go.
Heading to Fisherman's Wharf.
For government offices like the forestry, land management, right, there's a couple large but he wasn't a certain conductor. But he was very talented. 25 years old when he designed that one. 35 when he designed this one over here. Empress. Now, the legislature building is quite phenomenal. You can hear birds in the daytime. Victoria here. She was the second longest reigning monarch of the British Empire, but the longest one was her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth. Now this building on our right here, this kitchen terminal, was actually designed by Francis Rathbury as well. It was the last one he designed before he moved back to England. It was built in 1924. And it welcomed over 30,000 people to Victoria, or 140,000 people to Victoria over the 30 years that it was in use. So this is the ferry terminal here. And right along here is also the David Foster Rockaway. I don't know if you know who David Foster was. He's a famous music composer in the States, but he was actually born and raised in Victoria. So we have this walkway right back there that goes all the way along the waterfront, all the way to Fisherman's Wharf. And then when they didn't live there anymore, it was actually a boarding school for girls for a while. And then in 1980, it was turned into a hotel. So this is people in Henry that spent a lot of money this hotel very old. We wanted to be modern enough. We wanted it to stay very Victorian. It's a heritage house, so it has to be maintained. And that's part of Fisherman's work. They're called liverboards. The fishermen come in every day with the catch whatever that fish. They sell it to the local restaurants. The best fish and chips in town is down there.
I can do many colors.
Oh, you know me, you can't follow fucking rules.
That's exactly it, yeah.
Hello.
They're going to the playground, I think.
There you do. Watch me pick some L.
You want to see like you said you went?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't mean I want to eat it.
We can't find it, bud.
Okay, never mind. Thank you. Yeah. I brought